Hello, you've made it just in time for story time. Today we're going to read Dugie the Dinosaur, Scotland's Sauropod. Written by Anne and Steve Brusatte, illustrated by Shalla Gray, with permission from Curly Tail Books. Is everybody ready? Let's start. Scotland, 170 million years ago, the Jurassic Period. Everything was very different from today. Warmer, decidedly. Wetter, debatable. Full of dinosaurs, definitely. Living in this world were many amazing creatures. In one lagoon, there was a family of long-necked dinosaurs. Granny was the oldest and wisest. Then there were Mum and Dad, many brothers and sisters and cousins, and some babies too. One of the babies was called Dugie. He stomped and stamped through the shallow water, chasing his big siblings and eating the juicy seaweed that grew there. Long-necked dinosaurs are called sauropods. Famous examples are Brontosaurus and Diplodocus. Dugie wasn't allowed out too far because past the waves live little crocodiles that like to snap. But grown-ups could go out further. They were much, much bigger than the pesky crocs, and they were wise enough to know that further out in the open ocean were even more terrifying reptiles. They were much, much bigger than the crocs. They had long snouts. They had huge mouths. They had hundreds of sharp, pointy teeth. The scientific name of this terrifying reptile is Jackvara. It is a Gaelic name pronounced Jackvara, which means marine lizard. So Dugie kept to the shallows, stomping and sploshing and gobbling as much seaweed as he could. One day he found a massive patch behind some big rocks and happily started to munch his way through it. Dugie was so busy he didn't notice the wind getting stronger or the rain starting. Suddenly, he felt the water rising until it tickled his belly. It was a storm. His wise granny had told him what to do if the weather turned bad. He stomped out of the water as fast as he could, onto the land and into the forest. There were no crocs there. Dugie was scared. The wind was blowing stronger. It brought a new smell to Dugie's nose. It smelled delicious and fresh. It was so good that he followed it deeper into the forest. Eventually, Dugie stomped and stamped into a clearing surrounded by tall trees and lush ferns. Rain pittered and pattered through the leaves, making them glisten. His tummy grumbled loudly. Suddenly, he heard an odd noise. Dugie stopped and looked carefully around him until he saw what was making the noise. He breathed a sigh of relief. Under a pile of broken branches, he spotted a stegosaur with plates on its back and spikes on its tail. It was trapped by a fallen tree, but was still chewing on some leaves within mouth's reach. Slowly and steadily, the stegosaur looked towards Dugie. "Plenty to share. I can't reach too many," he said, chewing with his mouth open. Dugie stomped over to see if he could help. "Thank you. But are you okay?" Dugie asked. "You look very uncomfortable." The stegosaur blinked. "My name is Scotty. The tree fell in the storm and I'm stuck." Dugie stretched proudly. "Well, I'm Dugie and I'm a long-necked dinosaur." With that, Dugie used his powerful long neck to knock the branches away. Scotty pushed slowly to his feet, still chewing. "Thank you," he said slowly, passing Dugie some ferns. "We don't get many long necks in the forest. Where are you from?" Dugie swallowed. "I live in the lagoon. Mostly I eat seaweed, but the storm came and I've always been told to get out of the water when that happens." "What is seaweed?" Scotty asked. "Sounds tasty to me," he mumbled through a mouthful of leaves. Dugie was surprised. Scotty had never heard of seaweed. "Why, seaweed is yummy. It is salty and chewy, purple and green, juicy and delicious. You must try it. Follow me." With that, Dugie stomped and stamped back the way he had come. Scotty stared, still chewing, and then followed his new friend. It was getting darker, and the forest was quiet. Dugie stomped and stamped and stopped. He looked around nervously. "Which way to the lagoon, Scotty?" Scotty, still chewing, was daydreaming about the delicious seaweed. He looked at Dugie. "I don't know. I've never been. Maybe—" He stopped. He turned and looked at the bushes. They were rustling. Something was there. Scotty and Dugie huddled together nervously. Then, out of the leaves crawled something very unusual. It had a long beak and pointy arms. It was one of the flying creatures Dugie had seen above the lagoon. Sometimes they would land on his granny's back, and she would swat them with her tail. But this one was on the ground. Dugie was not afraid. "Are you okay?" Dugie asked curiously. The flying creature looked worried. She stood up as tall as she could. Then she noticed the leaves hanging out of Scotty's mouth and relaxed. "Hello, plant eaters. I'm Maggie, a pterosaur. I got blown away by the storm, and all these trees are in my way. I can't get back to the sky." Her head drooped sadly. Dugie knew how she felt. "It's okay. I'm scared too. I got separated from my family in the storm, and now I'm lost." Then he had an idea. "Scotty, do you know the way back to the clearing where we met?" Scotty nodded, still chewing. Dugie turned to Maggie. "Hop on to my head." The pterosaur looked confused. "I'm Dugie, and I have a nice long neck, so you will be up high and safe. We can head into the clearing and you can fly from there." Maggie nodded and spread her wings, leaping onto Dugie's head. Scotty turned and Dugie stomped and stamped after him. Soon they reached the clearing. The rain was lighter now and the wind had dropped. Maggie stretched her wings and flew from Dugie's head. She laughed with delight, looping in the sky before gliding above the trees. She could see the lagoon in the distance. "Dugie, I can see your family. I can guide you back to them." Dugie cheered as he and Scotty followed below. They were on their way home. "Stop!" shouted Maggie suddenly. She had seen something dangerous heading right for them. "Raptors! Meat-eaters, run! Follow me! I can see a path!" she yelled to Dugie and Scotty. Dugie stomped and stamped as fast as he could. Scotty followed, and for the first time he stopped chewing. The raptors raced closer. They snapped their mouths at Dugie's feet and slashed their claws at Scotty's tail. "Run left!" Maggie shouted from the air. "Now turn right! I promise the lagoon is ahead!" The trees were so close together that Dugie and Scotty couldn't see far in front of them. Maggie was their only hope of escaping. They ran as fast as they could. They could hear the raptors behind them, but they never looked back, only up at the way Maggie was leading them. Then finally they saw it, the lagoon. Dugie shouted to his family as he ran into the water. Safe at last, he thought. He knew the raptors wouldn't go near his humongous granny and parents, but Scotty was not used to the wet sand and slimy rocks. The poor stegosaur slipped and fell. The raptors pounced onto his back. "Help!" Scotty cried. The grown-up longnecks were still too far away. It was up to Dugie to save his friend. Then Dugie remembered his wise granny had told him he was not only special because he had a long neck, but because he had a long tail too. And although he was a baby, he was still much bigger than the raptors. Dugie whipped his tail back. Thwack! He slapped one of the raptors as hard as he could. The meat-eater went face first into a mud puddle. The other raptors froze. Now they were scared. Whoosh! Dugie slashed his tail again and smacked two of the raptors into each other. Then Dugie drew back his tail one last time and whacked the raptors as hard as he could, sending them flying past Maggie in the sky, back to where they came from, deep into the forest and far from the lagoon. Scotty and Dugie and the whole Longneck herd were safe. Dugie ran up to his granny and nuzzled into her neck. His mum and dad cheered with relief. They had been worried that Dugie might not come back, but he had returned as a hero. Dugie smiled at Scotty and Maggie. He couldn't have done it without them. Best of all, he had two new friends, and together they made a dynamite team. The end. I hope you enjoyed our story today. See you next time.